One concept that people sometimes struggle with is the idea of testing their critical assumptions. So let's do a deep dive into the testing section to look at this more. So after clicking on Tests and selecting that, click on Create New Test. Now the first thing you need to do is define your critical assumptions, or the critical assumption that you want to test here. So a critical assumption is basically a belief that you have that you're not sure about, but which needs to be true for your business idea to be successful. So a very common one is like, customers will want to buy this. And then you can select which sections of your business model canvas this applies to. So as this applies to your customer segment, but also the value that you're offering them, it's these two. And then we can go to next. So once we've defined critical assumptions, you can then define what kind of test you want to do. And we suggest there's 6 different ones you can do on Validate. So you can build a homepage using Validate, you can do research, you can do surveys, you can interview, you can prototype, so you can show people examples, and you can make sales. And for each one, we give you some examples, ways to do it, and also the quality of evidence. So for example, selling generally creates better quality evidence because people have to put their money where their mouth is, unlike research, which is still important, but maybe the quality of evidence is slightly less. So let's say we were going to do interviews. So we select interviews and then click next. Then for each testing type that you can select, Validate gives you some examples of ways or toolkits that can help. So in this, there is a interview guide that someone else has created, 100 good interview questions, an interview script generator. So you can look at those for inspiration and support. And then the first thing to do is to plan your interview. So you might write more here, but in this case, we might just say like, we will speak to 10 potential customers. So that's our interview plan. Then you can go next. So once we've created the plan, you then have 2 options. If you have results, i.e. you've done the interviews, you can click Analyze Results. If you haven't yet done the interviews, or you haven't done the research or the testing, you can click Done and you can return later. But let's say here we do have the results. So we can go Analyze Results. And then here we would add the results and the learning. So for example, from the 10 people we spoke with, 8 loved the idea. Now I imagine your results will probably be slightly more thorough and accurate than this, but this is an example. You can also add here reflections, things that you've learned, and then you can decide whether your assumption is validated. So is it valid, invalid, or unsure? Unsure is also a very common scenario. So you might have run some tests, the data is still a bit messy, you're not sure yet. So you could say unsure and you could run more experiments and more tests. In this case, we'll click valid because people love the idea, as I said. And then finally, we have a summary of your testing. And so when you click done, you can see each of these cards is a different test that you've created. You can quickly click on that card to edit it. You can see here the critical information, like what was the status of it? Was it valid or invalid? Were you unsure? Which BMC blocks does it refer to? And so this then becomes a great way to review all of your testing, plan your testing, but also analyze the testing that you've done. So that's the testing section. It's very critical to think about what the critical assumptions are underlying your business idea and think how you can test those as quickly, as cheaply as possible. And Validate gives you a great structure to do that and then to record your testing. So that's the testing section of Validate.